Hello, my name is Clinton Chandler with CoxHealth and Wellness, and I want to talk to you a little bit today about financial wellness, so how money affects our lives and our health. And when you think about it, money does affect everything that you do. Everything that you do. It affects what you do with your day, it affects what you eat, it affects your health care, it affects everything. So we're going to talk a little bit today about managing money and what we should do, some good decisions we can make, how to budget, investing, a whole bunch of other stuff. So before we get started, I've got a number here. $15,609. Now I want you to take a second and ask yourself if you can guess what this number is. I'm going to give you a second here. If you give up $15,609 was the average household credit card debt in the year 2014. You will see a number underneath this, 15.07%. That was the average interest paid on that debt. So if you ever wonder why, when you go to your mailbox and open it up, and they couldn't stuff another credit card offer in there, this is why right here. And there's a really good quote. I really love this quote. Money, the harshest master, but the greatest slave. And I guarantee you that's true. If you do not manage your money, it will manage you, like I talked about before. It will affect everything you do. So what are our topics today? We're going to talk about the effect of money on health. Why are we bad with money? The psychology of money, value. I think this is really interesting. We're going to talk about some scientific studies that I found that I think are fascinating. The importance of and how to begin a budget. Credit cards are the devil. Section 4. And I will put the caveat used unwisely, but they're very hard to use responsibly. We're going to talk about them. We're going to talk a little bit about retirement account basics, Roth 401ks and IRAs, how to invest simple and lazy, and then a few resources you can utilize. So, money, the root of all evil? No, the root of all stress. In 2014, Americans listed money as the largest stressor in their life. And if you think about it, what do you worry about most? I will almost guarantee you in some way or another it is related to money at some point. I will almost guarantee it. 3 out of 4 Americans said they felt monetary stress at least some of the time. With 75%, I would say is conservative. Almost everyone I know has some sort of stress related to money. Individuals who have high stress levels are more than 40% more likely to have heart disease, 25% more likely to have a heart attack, and 50% more likely to have a stroke. Why would that be? When you worry, your blood pressure goes up. And they've scientifically proven that when you worry, it releases hormones and chemicals into your bloodstream that increase inflammation. Inflammation leads to things like atherosclerosis, heart disease, all those bad things directly related to stress. And what's stressing you out most of the time? Well, 75% of the time, according to these statistics, it's money. Couples who reported disagreeing about finances once a week were over 30% more likely to get divorced than couples who reported disagreeing about finances a few times a month. Think about the last time you had a disagreement with your spouse. Was it in some way related to money? I know in our household, my wife, her biggest hobby is horses. I don't know if you know anything about horses, but there are holes in the pasture you throw money in case you don't know. So I know I'll look at the bank statement, I'll look at all these outflows, and where are they going? PFI. The feed store, I said, sweetheart, what did you buy now? And she grabs it from me and looks. I like fishing. She goes, I don't know. What did you get at Bass Pro? Dang it. So it goes both ways for sure. But it's one of those things, once you have it managed, I guarantee you're going to have your home life is going to be a lot more harmonious. Once you get a budget, you get everything flowing right, it's just going to cut down on disagreements and stress a ton. Because even if you're not disagreeing about money directly, if money's stressing you out, if you're stressed out, you're a lot more likely to have a hair trigger about everything else and get angry real quick about stuff. So having it managed is going to give you a whole host of benefits. So the psychology of money. Why are we bad with money? 46% of Americans are saving less than 5% of their yearly income. Millennials, individuals under the age of 35, had a savings rate of negative 2% in 2014. What does that mean? They were actually spending more than they were saving. They were going 2% into debt every year. So why are we bad with money? Why? Well, there's a couple reasons. First of all, we're not really good at calculating value. We're especially bad at calculating future value. So, and also, we are maximized as a species to live in the moment. The majority of our time as a species on this planet, we were hunter-gatherers. Average age of death was 19 years old. We are maximized to live in the now. These recent developments of having plenty of food, clean water, medicine, health are very, very recent. You could even go 100 years ago, 120 years ago, and the life expectancy was 47. So as a species, we're maximized to extract as much pleasure from stuff as we can, as fast as we can. Why? We might be dead tomorrow. I very seriously doubt anyone. There's very many people under the age of 19 that are watching this presentation right now. Statistically, if you're a hunter-gatherer and you're over 19, then you're an anomaly. Age 25, you're a senior citizen. So that's one of the reasons. And then there's a couple of different studies I want to talk about here. One is called the theater ticket. This one was actually conducted by a guy named Dan Gilbert. He's a Harvard-trained psychologist, and he gave this survey to a bunch of people. Two different versions. You are going to see a show. In your wallet, you have a ticket that cost you $20, and you have a $20 bill. You get to the show and realize that you have lost the ticket along the way. Do you still go in and watch the show? When he gave this to people, on average, 70% of people said, no, I would not. Why would I had a ticket and lost it. Why would I go see the show? I'm not spending $40 to go see the show. That's double. I'm going home. Forget it. Okay. So let me tell you the second version. You are going to see a show. In your wallet, you have two $20 bills. You get to the show and realize that you have lost one of the $20 bills along the way. Do you still see the show? Overwhelmingly, almost everyone says, well, of course I still see the show. What does losing a $20 bill have to do with me not going to see the show? Let me break it down for you. In both cases, you are going to see the show. In both cases, you had a piece of paper worth $20 in your pocket. The only difference at the end was one of those pieces of paper had a president on it. That was the only difference. What difference should it make, period? It's one of those things where we have trouble assigning value to stuff. Here's another one that really looks at future value. It's called the $50 question. Okay? Let's assume that I am the greatest, nicest presenter ever, or I'm a really bad presenter, and the only way I get people to come see me is to give them money. So I reach into my pocket, and I got $50 bills, a whole bunch of them, and I start giving them to everybody. Okay? This was actually an experiment that was done by a guy named Dan Ariely. He passed out the $50 bills and let people hold them for a while. And then he said, okay, I'll tell you what. You give me the $50 back, and I will give you a guarantee. I will guarantee you that I will come back in 1 year from now, and I will give you $55. Will you give me the $50 back? Overwhelmingly, over 95% of the people said no. He increased it. $60, $70, $80, all the way up to $100. And finally, some people started to come around a little bit at $100. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. I give you $50. And I say I'm going to come back in 1 year and give you $55. You say $5, that's not much. What percentage return are you getting on that $50? 10%. Can anyone here tell me where you can put your money safely? Because I've given you a guarantee that I'm coming back where you can get 10% return. I will guarantee you won't find one. What's a savings account paying right now? Less than 1 probably. You might get it tied up in some CDs and get maybe 1 or 2%. But if I asked that question in a room full of investors or bankers, they would say, $50? How about $50,000? How much do you want at 10%? I'll give you all you want. You're going to pay me 10% and guarantee it. So we don't think financially. So it makes it really hard for us to make these types of decisions. It's also why it's hard for us to save for the future when you think about it. We want the rewards now. We're Americans especially. We want results now. We want rewards now. Not even a year. So it's really hard to think about the future. So now let's talk a little bit about budgeting, how you can take the power back. It's one of those things where if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So the first thing you need to do is see what you're spending your money on. And the easiest way to do this is to get a snapshot of your bank account. Your bank will give you that, your checking account, and see where the money's going. Most people, when they do this, are shocked. Shocked. I know a ton of people. Matter of fact, I was giving this presentation to a company, and a lady who had done some budgeting before said, you know, I actually did that. And I found out I was spending $140 a month on Andy's ice cream. I'm sorry, frozen custard. On Andy's frozen custard. She said, I had no idea I was spending that much money. And this is what normally gets us. We think that typically, I don't spend a lot of money. I don't buy a whole lot of clothes. I don't buy $100 shirts. I don't buy fancy, jewelry or anything like that. What gets you are little things you buy every day. So that Diet Dr. Pepper, if you're me, on the way into work. A candy bar every day. Take that over 30 days. Some of you may have heard the expression, Americans are latte poor. If you want to know where that comes from, how much does a cup of coffee at Starbucks cost? What, $3 or $4? What if you get a caramel macchiato? $6 or $7? I know people that buy one of those every day. Yeah. $6 or $7 every day. Now take that over a month. Let's just say that you buy one every day that you work. So 5 days a week, that's $30 a week, $120 a month. Over the year, it's $1,440 for cups of coffee. You can get a cup of coffee for free at work almost. I almost guarantee it. I will almost guarantee it. May not taste as good, but I'll tell you what, it'll be better for you. If you ever look at the calories and a lot of that stuff. So you're paying for something unhealthy, and it's a lot of money. What if you took $1,440 a year and invested it? That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. If you take $100 invested a month for 30 years and get the average market rate of return, which is between 8 and 9%, you'll have approximately $186,000 in 30 years. And that's investing $100 a month, not the $120 that the Starbucks is costing you. So, looking at these things, write it down. Write down where your money's going. Categorize your expenses. Give yourself hard expenses and then give yourself soft expenses. What do I mean by hard expenses? Things you have to buy. House payment, cell phone, food, electricity, internet. Now, you might say, well, that's kind of a soft expense. But really, in this day and age, I would almost make the argument that it's almost like electricity. You probably should have the internet. But then you have your soft expenses. That's where we get in trouble. That's things like candy bars, eating lunch out at work every day, going to see movies, entertainment, that type of stuff. Okay, so you have hard money, soft money, all right? Then give yourself some hard spending limit categories. Say, I'm only going to spend $20 a week on eating out, okay? If anyone here has heard of the Dave Ramsey method, and I don't push any particular method, but I think he has a good method. You literally take money, hard cash, put it in envelopes, write down spending categories on the envelope. So you could say entertainment on one, food on another, groceries, whatever. have that envelope, and once the money in that envelope is gone, you are done. It automatically shuts itself off. That way you're not having your debit card, which is a real easy way to spend a lot of money quick before you've even realized it. Once you see that hard money going out, it makes a big difference. Okay? And there are a whole lot of good get-out-of-debt systems. Once again, I'm not pushing any that Dave Ramsey method. It's low-tech, but there's some really good higher-tech ones. They have a lot of apps, like YNAB stands for You Need a Budget. I think it costs a little bit, but it's a fantastic budgeting tool. Mint is another one. But there's a whole bunch of different ones that you can use. And the cool thing about those is they will sync to your bank account and to your phone, and you can look at it daily to see how much is going in or out. It's a fantastic way to track it. And give your money a job, like I talked about. Give your money a job. Know where the money is going. Be in control of it. If you don't control it, it will control you every time. So, my next section. Credit cards are the devil. Most of the time, unless you are really financially disciplined, and we're going to talk about when they can be good. So I like this quote. This is by Johnny Carson. Scientists have developed a powerful new weapon that destroys people and leaves buildings standing. It's called the 17% interest rate. Isn't that true? So what are credit cards? High interest loans that encourage the minimum payment to be made. They want you to make the minimum payment. They really, really do. So if you look at the bottom of my slide here, assume you have a credit card debt of $15,000 and it carries an interest rate of about 17%, and you make the minimum payment of $250 a month. It will take you 135 months to pay off that card, or a little over 11 years. During that time, you'll end up paying $18,000 in interest. That's over and above the $15,000 principal. So that's why you get all these credit card offers. And boy, they make it easy these days, don't you? I got some the other day that was just a blank check. Already had my name on it and everything. Had an amount, $5,000. All I had to do was sign it, and boy, $5,000. Till you look at the fine print, see it's 18% interest rate. But boy, do they like to make it easy for you to spend money. You know, and it's psychologically easier to spend money with credit cards. And once again, this is another one of those value problems. And to illustrate this, I'm going to talk about an experiment that a gentleman, once again, his name was Dan Ariely. He was actually studying cheating, but this experiment really illustrates how well we treat things that are one step away from cash. We treat them much differently than we do actual cash itself. So he had this experiment. And the experiment was, you're going to solve 20 simple math problems. They were very easy, but the thing was, you don't have enough time to solve all of them, okay? And he offered to pay people taking the experiment $1 per correct question, okay? So he had his control group, had a bunch of people come in, he handed out the math problems, set the timer. When it was over, on average, people solved 5, okay? So they came up, they graded them, gave them each $1, $5 per question. Next group, he tempted to cheat. Same exact experiment, 20 simple math problems, not enough time, puts the group in, but in this condition, he put a shredder in the back of the room, okay? So whenever they were done, they were instructed to take their paper, fold it over, and put it through the shredder. Little did they know, the shredder was rigged. It didn't shred anything. It just made a bunch of noise, so they could actually look at the results later. Then after they were done shredding it, they were to come up to the front of the room and report how many they solved. Well, now all of a sudden, people solved 7 questions, which he found interesting because they literally could have cheated the whole way and no one would have known. So he ran this a whole bunch of times. He started increasing the amount of money he paid them for each right question. $2 per right question, $3, $5, $10, all the way up to $20 per correct question. Here's the interesting thing. People still, on average, reported that they only solved 7, which he thought was very interesting. It seemed that they were insensitive to being offered more money to cheat. So he thought about this, and his conclusion was that we all want to benefit from cheating, but we still want to feel good about ourselves. So we have this personal fudge factor. We'll cheat just a little bit, but just enough where we can still feel good about ourselves. So he asked himself, what else could I do to change this up? So he ran it again, shredder in the back, but this time, instead of giving people cash, he issued them little tokens. You issued tokens, people took their tokens outside the room, there was a table set up, and they exchanged the tokens for money outside. What happened now? On average, people reported solving 12 questions all of a sudden. People started saying they solved all of them, completely and totally going off the ranch as far as cheating went. And he made the observation, isn't this very interesting from some of the things we see on Wall Street, where everything is one step removed from cash. Stocks, derivatives, all those different things. But what I'm getting at is we treat things one step away from cash much different than we treat cash itself. This is how we get in trouble with credit cards. It's like the story of the little boy. He gets suspended from school from stealing. And he comes home and his mother's like, you are in so much trouble, wait till your father gets home. His father gets home and goes, son, I am so disappointed. I am so ashamed. We raised you better than this, you know. You stole some kid's pencil. How could you do this? This is so embarrassing. You know, and if you wanted pencils, you should have just told me I got you some from work. Right? You guys get it? Right? How would you feel about taking $5 out of the petty cash box versus stealing a box of pencils from work or a box of pens? Feels very different, right? Okay, so we can agree. And this is the reason we get in trouble with credit cards. That's one step away from money. It makes it easier to spend money. It's like there's no money going out because we don't see it going out. We get in big trouble with these things. So we need to be very careful. You need to be very disciplined with credit cards. And once you get disciplined, have your budget, everything set out, you can actually use credit cards against the companies. Some of these credit cards will give you 1% back on all purchases. Some will give you 2% back on gas, 2 or 3% on groceries. Once you have everything, your budget done, and you've mastered all your finances, this is a great way to get a little bit of extra Christmas money at the end of the year. I think we do this, and I think on average we get a couple $100 back a year. But you got to make sure you got to pay that off at the end of the month. Do not carry a balance on there. As soon as you start carrying a balance, they're going to make their money back real quick. All right. So investing. I've got this slide right here you're going to see. If you can identify this gentleman, I'm going to hold it up for the people that are watching right now. If you guys, anyone know who this is? I'll let him focus on it a little bit. I'll give you a hint. The Oracle of Omaha. It's Warren Buffett, widely considered to be the greatest investor that's ever lived. There's a reason why he's smiling in that picture. Last year, he averaged about $22,000 a minute. This guy has his money working for him, for sure. And that's what investing is. Instead of working for your money works for you. That's where you want to get. That should be the end game of your financial planning, is your money works for you, you don't work for your money. All right? So, I'm just going to talk about a couple different basic things as far as investments go. We're just going to talk about stocks and bonds, okay? And this may be remedial for some of you. You may know all about it. Other people, I just start with the basics, okay? First thing we're going to talk about, stock. Stock is the partial ownership of a business that entitles you to profits and participation in any gains or losses in the value of the business, along with profits, okay? So the easiest way to think about this, a lot of people get confused about what a stock is. Let's assume that I go into business with my friend Mandy, and we buy a gas station together, okay? And we buy it under an LLC, so that would make sense if we buy it together. You could issue 2 shares of stock in that business because she owns half, I own half. 1 share, 2 shares of stock all together, okay? And let's say that we have this gas station, and they put a new interstate in right next to it. We were really smart about where we put our gas station, and it gets busy. Well, what's that going to do to our gas station? The value's going to go up because we've got a business that's making money and is successful, okay? Stock is the exact same thing, except for having typically 2 shares outstanding. If you look at a company like Microsoft, they'll have billions of shares outstanding. So whenever you buy a share of stock, all you're doing is owning a little piece of all these different companies. And when you own that little piece, you are entitled, just like our gas station, if they make good business decisions and are a good business and it goes up in value, you participate in that because your share or ownership goes up. If you receive dividends, that would be just like Mandy and I getting profit from our gas station. That's all that is, the shares in the profit. Now, that being said, what if we built our gas station and then along a busy highway and they decided to divert the highway? What happens to our gas station? Down, right? Same thing with stocks. So you participate in gains, but you also participate in the losses as well. That's why they can be risky. That's why you want to diversify, which we're going to talk about a little bit here later. All right. Second thing, bonds. And all a bond is, it's kind of like the opposite of a credit card. Instead of you borrowing money, you are going to lend money to someone, and they're going to pay you a certain % interest on it. All right? And that's just the basic parts of bonds. They can get real tricky as far as valuing, and we're not going to go into that. Actually, I have a degree in finance from MSU, and I remember the section on bonds was particularly confusing. But just think about it as a loan. You're giving money out, and someone is going to pay you back the principal plus interest on that loan. Okay? And there's different ones: business, federal, government, state governments, municipalities. All these different entities issue these bonds. Now, that being said, if you buy a bond that pays 2%, what does that typically tell you about that business? That's a real low interest rate. Probably that's a real low risk type of investment. So that could be like the federal government, for instance. So buying T-bills or something like that. Now, the opposite. What if I say they're paying 15% on a bond, which actually puts it in what they call the junk category. But that tells you the business is really, really risky. So high rate of return, but boy, high rate of risk too. And that's what all investing is a risk-reward trade-off, whether it's stocks or bonds. Either one, okay? So I'll talk a little bit about individual retirement accounts, because I think there's a lot of confusion about these. A lot of people think that I've talked to that don't know anything about, they have never really looked at finance much. They think an IRA is an actual investment in and of itself. Like you put money into it and you earn interest just in the account. It's not what it is. An IRA, think of it as like a box that you put money into, and within that box you invest in things. So stocks or bonds, for instance, within that box. Mutual funds usually, okay? So there's a couple different kinds, traditional IRAs and Roth IRAs. And there's they can get real complicated with these as well. But just the basic difference between the two is in a traditional IRA, contributions are tax deductible. So whenever you put contributions in, you don't get taxed on that money for that year. A Roth IRA is a little bit different. You do get taxed on that money the year you put it in. But whenever you take distributions out later, let's say at retirement, they are not taxed. And there's different situations where those are good or bad, and we won't get into that either because that also gets complicated. But that's the basic difference between a traditional and a Roth. And of course there's limits on how much you can put in there too, which you'll see on the slide here. Then you have your 401ks or 403bs. These are great if your company offers them. They're employee-sponsored retirement plans. Tax deductible. I think the max contribution on those is $16,500, which is really nice. And what the cool thing about these is they offer an employee match. So you definitely, if you're not putting any more into them, you definitely need to put enough in to get the employee match. So let's say they match up to 7% wherever you work. So if you put 3.5% in, they'll put the other 3.5% in. If you don't participate in these, you are throwing money away. This is free money. All you have to do is allot it to go out of your paycheck. I highly recommend that you do this. Highly recommend that you do it. And typically within these 401ks or 403bs, they have a whole lot of different vehicles you can invest in. A lot of different mutual funds and index funds and stuff like that. Okay, so the question is then, what should I invest in? Whatever Warren Buffett's buying, right? You can actually do that. He has a stock called Berkshire Hathaway. You can invest in him. But you know, probably the simplest and easiest thing that you can do, and this was an observation made by a guy named John Bogle, and he was head of the Vanguard family of mutual funds for years and years and years. He made the observation that 99% of all mutual fund and hedge fund managers over a period of time could not beat the average return on the S&P 500 index. So, that being said, and they have these funds, they're called S&P 500 index funds. The easiest thing you can do is buy into one of those. Whenever you do that, the Standard & Poor's 500 is just the top 500 companies per market cap in the United States. When you buy one share of those, it's like buying 1/500th of each one of those companies. Now remember what I talked about before about diversification. All diversification is not putting your eggs all in one basket. So for instance, if anyone was old enough to remember the Enron debacle, a lot of people lost their entire retirement fund, and the reason they did, they were only invested in Enron. When it went under, they went under. The S&P 500, you're basically owning 500 different stocks in one. So if one tanks, that's all right. The other 499 hopefully are doing okay. So you're diversified across the whole plethora of stocks. And on average, depending on how you calculate it, the S&P 500 index, since its inception in the early 1900s, has returned between 8 and 11%. That's a very good return, especially considering it's a pretty safe return. All right. He even said if you wanted to get even more diversified, you could do the Majesty of Simplicity portfolio, which is a 3-fund portfolio. And they have these funds too. 1/3 total U.S. stock market index. So instead of this S&P 500, you buy the entire index. So it's like owning a little piece of every stock on the index. 1/3 international stock market index fund. So you own a little bit of all the stocks in the world, basically, that are traded. And 1/3 total bond market fund index. So that's just to help with this makes it a little bit safer. It helps with volatility, especially as you get older and towards more retirement. You want things to be a little less volatile. Okay, so I hope that helps a little bit when talking about investing. All right, and the very last question, the final thought: can money buy happiness? Do you think? Can money buy happiness? They actually did a study on this here a while back, and they actually found that after you hit a certain amount, and that on average that amount seemed to be about $70,000 a year. Once you were making $70,000 a year, the law of diminishing returns kicks in. So if you make $140,000, it doesn't make you twice as happy at all. So, matter of fact, once you get up to a certain amount, it seems like it almost becomes a hindrance, and you're less happy a lot of times. So that's just something important to keep in mind. Money doesn't, what's that country song? Can't buy happiness, but it can buy a boat. Is that how it goes? Something like that. But once you have your boat, you should be pretty much all right. Guys, if you have any questions, Clinton Chandler, clinton.chandler@coxhealth.com. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you have, and thanks for listening.